The river was always silent, cold, still, almost too still. But on October 17, 1923, the silence broke. Forever. The small village of Ravenbrook, tucked deep within the misty valleys of West Virginia, awoke to a nightmare. The river that had always run clear now flowed red as blood. No one spoke. No one dared. Parents clutched their children, whispering old prayers. The elders muttered of debts long unpaid, of promises made generations ago to something that lived beneath the water. At sunset, terror struck. 3 families vanished without trace. The Hartfields, the Monroes, and the Tanners. Their homes were left behind in chaos. Doors swung open in the cold wind. Dinner sat untouched on tables. Chairs toppled, as if someone had been dragged away screaming. Even the family dog was gone. Only its broken chain remained. The arrival of Sheriff Elias Crowley, a rugged man with iron-gray hair, rode into Ravenbrook at dawn. The mist clung to the village like a shroud. The air reeked of rust and decay, heavy and choking. He entered the homes, lantern trembling in his hand. No bodies, no footprints leaving the property, no sign of a struggle beyond the silence itself. Then he found something strange on the floor of the Tanner house. A wooden carving, crude, childlike. A faceless figure with outstretched arms. On its back, one word scratched so deep it splintered the wood. Witness. Crowley questioned the townsfolk, demanding answers. But their eyes stayed cold and distant, as if they knew more than they dared speak. Finally, an old woman, her voice cracked and trembling, whispered, "The river takes what it is owed. It always has." That night, screams tore through the valley. By morning, 5 more villagers were gone. Again, only the carvings remained, always placed near the water's edge, arms raised toward the dark current. The descent into chaos, Sheriff Crowley sent a frantic telegram to the state authorities. He begged for reinforcements. No reply ever came. It was as if Ravenbrook had already been erased. 2 days later, Crowley himself disappeared. The only trace of him was his blood-soaked badge, nailed to a gnarled tree near the riverbank. That night, the remaining townsfolk abandoned Ravenbrook. Horses were left saddled and tethered. Clothes flapped on lines in the cold autumn wind. Lamps burned until they sputtered out on their own. It was as if the entire town had been swallowed by the earth. For nearly a century, Ravenbrook was forgotten. Its name vanished from maps, its history scrubbed clean from archives and records. But the river remained, dark and patient, always waiting. The discovery in 1996 on. A stormy evening in 1996, a group of young thrill-seekers and amateur historians stumbled across Ravenbrook's ruins. They filmed everything on an old camcorder, laughing nervously as they explored decaying houses and moss-covered gravestones. Their footage was never publicly released, but fragments were later recovered from a destroyed camera, found downstream. In the final seconds of the tape, a shaky voice whispered, barely audible over the storm, "They're still here, watching us from the river." Then silence. A single splash. The last frame shows a wooden carving floating past the lens, its blank face tilted toward the camera, almost alive. The hidden truth. The footage was immediately seized by federal authorities. Officially, the group was declared missing after a boating accident. Unofficially, the case was buried. But one copy of the footage survived, hidden by a local historian named Dr. Margaret Voss. Margaret had grown up hearing whispers of Ravenbrook. As a child, the story haunted her. She dedicated her life to uncovering the truth. For years, she combed through old church records, sealed court documents, and forgotten property deeds. One name surfaced again and again: the Order of Silent Witnesses, founded in 1849. This secretive sect worshipped something they called the Drowned One. According to their texts, the river wasn't just water, it was alive. A sentient, ancient being, a creature beneath the surface that demanded human offerings to remain calm. Every 20 years, the order selected new witnesses. Not priests, not leaders, sacrifices. chosen to see what must never be spoken, their silence sealed forever. Margaret discovered that the last recorded ritual had taken place on October 17th, 1903, exactly 20 years before Ravenbrook's final night. The pattern was undeniable, but if this was true, why did the entire town disappear? Margaret's descent into madness. Determined to find answers, Margaret traveled to Ravenbrook alone. Armed with a lantern, a tape recorder, and her grandfather's revolver, she entered the ruins under a moonless sky. The river glistened like black glass, silent but watchful. Her boots sank into the mud as she crossed the abandoned streets. Houses leaned like broken teeth. Their windows were open mouths, whispering in the wind. Old signs creaked, unreadable beneath decades of moss. Then she saw them, carvings, dozens of them, leading from the village square down to the riverbank. Each more intricate than the last, each faceless, each with arms outstretched. Some were small enough to fit in her palm. Others towered over her, their shadowy silhouettes looking disturbingly human. Margaret's voice shook as she recorded a message. If anyone finds this, leave now. These aren't symbols, they're watchers. Suddenly, a splash shattered the silence. Margaret froze, heart pounding. From the river, a figure rose. Pale, thin, its eyes black, bottomless voids. Then another emerged, and another, until dozens stood waist-deep in the water. Silent, still, watching. The prophecy. Margaret stumbled backward, tripping over something buried in the mud. A leather-bound book, waterlogged but intact. She tore it open and gasped. Inside were lists of names. Every family that had ever vanished. Each name was written in a rusty blood-red ink. At the very bottom was a final entry. October 17th, 2023. The next ritual. The next offering. Margaret's terrified voice filled the tape recorder. It's not over. It was never over. They will come again. She ran through the night, branches clawing her face while faint voices whispered behind her. Witness, witness, witness. Authorities dismissed her account as delusion. Her report was locked away. But on October 18, 2003, a lone fisherman vanished near Ravenbrook. His empty boat was found floating upstream. Inside lay a single, perfectly dry carving. Faceless, arms outstretched. The return of the witnesses, October 16, 2023. One day before the date etched in the book. A small documentary team arrived at Ravenbrook, armed with drones, cameras, and endless curiosity. They weren't just chasing a ghost story, they wanted fame, answers, proof. Among them was Alex Grant, a direct descendant of Sheriff Elias Crowley, the man who vanished in 1923. Alex carried his great-grandfather's journal. The last entry read, "If the river calls your name, do not answer." The team camped near the broken remains of the old bridge. Night fell swiftly. The forest swallowed the last of the light. The river turned black, reflecting nothing. Their cameras captured strange shapes beneath the water. Pale flashes, silent ripples that moved against the current, and faint whispered voices carried by the wind. The final ritual at midnight, the river began to rise. Not like a flood, like breathing. The air turned icy. Their lanterns sputtered. Then dozens of faceless wooden carvings surfaced, floating toward them as if pulled by invisible strings. Suddenly a voice echoed, low, wet, unnatural. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. Witness. Panic erupted. 2 members bolted into the forest. Their screams were cut short by a sickening splash. Alex screamed into the darkness, "What do you want from us?" The river parted. Figures emerged from the depths, their bodies slick and dripping black water. Their faces were perfectly smooth, just like the carvings. They circled Alex, unmoving. One stepped forward and pointed at him. Its voice was a whisper and a scream combined. Blood remembers. The debt must be paid. The horrifying truth. Alex's mind snapped into horrifying clarity. The silent witnesses weren't merely cultists. They were the sacrifices themselves, forever bound to the river, forced to watch in eternal silence. The ritual wasn't worship. It was replacement. Every 20 years, new victims took their place. The creatures surged forward. Alex dropped his camera, its lens capturing a final image. Him being dragged into the water, mouth open in a soundless scream. Then, darkness. The aftermath at dawn, search teams arrived. The bridge was gone. The ruins had sunk deeper into the earth as if the river had swallowed them whole. Only one thing remained on the muddy shore, a fresh wooden carving, perfectly smooth. On its back, 3 words burned into the wood. "We are watching." To this day, Ravenbrook appears on no maps, but locals living miles downstream whisper of strange lights on foggy nights, and voices softly calling their names from the water. If you ever hear your name whispered by the river, do not turn around. Do not answer, because the next witness, it might be you. The screen fades to black.